On today's World Insight, the 7th Lanchang-Mekong Cooperation Foreign Ministers meeting convenes in Bagan. How can cooperation along the Mekong inspire nations in Southeast Asia and beyond?
The potential of the region has yet to be realized, and so it really needs a lot of basic infrastructure, which China and other big powers can provide.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Foreign ministers from the countries along the Lanchang-Mekong rivers met in Myanmar. With shared vision for development, they are focusing on concrete cooperation in agriculture, water resources, digital economy, and public health. It brings further momentum to this sub-regional cooperation, which the Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi described as a golden model of cooperation. So how to understand the nature and synergy of this cooperation? We invite a panel from the region. For Lanchang-Mekong cooperation in Bangkok, we have Thurasi Thanadang, who is the director of the Thai-Chinese Strategic Research Center with the National Research Council of Thailand. In Tokyo, Lin Tan-Wai, adjunct senior research fellow from Singapore East Asian Institute at the National University of Singapore. In Beijing, last but not least, Song Qingren, associate professor from the School of Asian Studies at Beijing Foreign Studies University. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. It's a big week for Lanchang-Mekong River cooperation. Mr. Thurasi, there are many initiatives brought up during the leaders' meeting. Tell me more about what do you think are the most practical ones?
So far, we talked about the Lanchang-Mekong as a model that Asia Pacific forward. I think in three areas, particularly politics, the model can show what really the different political system living together in a common ground of respect for. For the economics area, I think so many special funds, so many bilateral cooperation among the Lanchang-Mekong itself and also with China that have helped each other for the develop their own in terms of the new generation and also for the livelihood, so the quality of life.
It seems that Mr. Thurasi is concurring, Mr. Song from Beijing, what the Chinese Foreign Minister, State Councilor said about Lanchang-Mekong cooperation, setting, quote, a golden example of cooperation. What exactly do you think is the most valuable experience to draw from this cooperation?
In the past about 6 or 7 years, the Lanchang-Mekong cooperation has generated a lot of fruits. We have built a lot of roads in this region. We have upgraded our connectivity in this region. We have built some factories or some water resources projects in this region, and also we have upgraded this regional human resources development, and also we have promote the enlarged number of the foreign students exchange program among regional countries. So also for me, I have taught students from Laos in my class. I'm very glad, and she learned very hard. So this is a very good example for these regional countries human resources development, our cooperation to promote regional development.
Mr. Lim, even though Singapore is not part of the Lanchang-Mekong cooperation, But looking at what the other two gentlemen just said, how do you see this model, if quote unquote, to use this word, has been working so far?
Well, I think there's a lot of attempt to harness the potential of the region. For example, as you know, the region is very rich in dams that can be dammed up for hydropower. And in fact, some of the countries like Laos has aspirations to become the battery of Southeast Asia. And in fact, Singapore, even though it's far away from the Mekong, has been receiving electricity from the Mekong region, actually just last week, if I'm not wrong, or 2 weeks ago. So it affects other ASEAN countries outside the Mekong region as well. Second area in which they're working together closely is on ecology. There's a lot of biodiversity and a lot of species as well as natural resources in that area. So many countries want to work together to preserve the biodiversity. This is a common goal for all the countries in that region. And the third one is actually on water resources. As you know, because of climate change, water levels are becoming, there are changes in the water level, evaporation, etc. So there's incentives for these countries to work together to allocate the common resources of water that flows through their region from a single source. So there's much to have a cooperation on.
There are several areas that the cooperation are to take place. Mr. Soorasi, tell me more about, for a region that is very diverse in terms of development stages, how do you see they could complement one another in the development of these areas? And what are you focusing on right now?
The further cooperation that would be very much easier, more than any other area, is that the food security and also health security, that this region could build upon the local wisdom, the community that we have already been looking on the cooperation among border to border, and also even the digital economy right now. I think so far that we have the good connectivity, and we could see many special economic zone has already established.
If you look at the makeup of the Lancang-Mekong cooperation, one of the most advanced compared to the rest of this community is China's economy. And then there are countries of geographically a smaller entity. So many wonder whether this is the model that could work, or it is not about the size, but rather about the content of cooperation.
Very good question, indeed, because I don't think that the size of the country, or even to the amount of the people in each country would be the hurdle for cooperation. But the mentality, the mindset that we can come to work together, I think that is the more important. So I think even from the Lancang-Mekong to the maritime Southeast Asia, that will come for the more and more country to work together, inclusiveness.
You talk about two words which really give me a deep impression. One is mindset, the other is about inclusivity, inclusiveness rather. So Mr. Lim, looking from where you are, Singapore, how do you see that reflected in this Lancang-Mekong cooperation? Can we see sustainability of these qualities?
Well, the sustainability has become even more important. This is because this is the especially in the post-pandemic era, where many economies have been affected as well. And so in this sense, economic functionalism and economic constructivism is what represents the inclusivity by getting together and forging a stronger economic relationship. And the fortunate thing about ASEAN is that during the last 2 years, nobody adopted a beggar thy neighbor policy. In fact, East Asia forged together even stronger ties because of facing a common challenge. It is all the more crucial for these economies to work together. And how they work together is a greater institutionalization, especially with ASEAN centrality, working with external partners to ensure that it is a mutual sort of win-win situation. And the potential of the region has yet to be realized. And so it really needs a lot of basic infrastructure, which China and other big powers can provide for the region. And also there's a lot of expertise and technologies which are needed for managing climate change, especially Industry 4.0 technology. All these represent the future of such cooperation.
Mr. Song, I really wonder what is the key word that you would like to bring up?
Cooperation spirit. In the past, currently, and also in the future, we should follow our cooperation spirit and also our cooperation experience to strengthen our cooperation in the future. In many fields in this region, the Latin Mekong cooperation, we can further our cooperation in primary resources development and also water resources management, cooperation to deal with the virus pandemic, and also to promote our regional connectivity, and also to promote our ability to deal with many kinds of disasters in this region.
Right now, the biggest challenge are the uncertainties. Of course, you could argue, let's deal with these uncertainties one by one with the context of Lancang Mekong cooperation. First of all, geopolitics. Mr. Lim, how is ASEAN looking at some members of ASEAN cooperating with others from outside the ASEAN region, for example, China? How do you see the component of this layer of relationship in the overall greater geopolitics in the region and certainly beyond?
Well, as you know, ASEAN operates on two concepts. One is ASEAN centrality, and the other one is the Asia-Pacific framework. And so ASEAN centrality means that ASEAN is willing as a platform to work with all major, middle, and small powers in the region. And so that is the so-called magic or the secret sauce of ASEAN. And certainly cooperating with China and other big powers is part of this centrality. And given that Mekong cooperation is what is technically defined as sub-regionalism. Sub-regionalism is very important because each region within ASEAN, given it's such a diversified region, has its own characteristics. And if sub-regionalism can work, it means that it can cooperate, it can contribute to the overall regionalism of the area. And we have certainly seen this with the signing of RCEP during the pandemic, and perhaps even realize the future of FTAAP, a free trade area of the Asia Pacific. So if sub-regionalism can work, it shows that regionalism can work. And because ASEAN centrality allows it to have different affiliations with different superpowers or middle powers, so this will aggregate the region towards peace as well as a functional cooperation.
Mr. Surashi, let me go to you too about this. Thailand, very flexible, very pragmatic, I see, over the years. Now, you are an important member of ASEAN. You are an active member in Lancang Mekong cooperation and in Asia Pacific motivations. Tell me more about your thoughts in this regard, geopolitics.
I think that is one of the direction that Thai tried to make the more try to doing something on the right track, not break the ASEAN centrality, but we work inside the ASEAN to provide or to contribute something further in terms of Asia Pacific or even the sub-regionalism, as the Professor Lee said. Like when we talk about the GMS, the sub-regionalism, we learn also that there have been a Lomé Kong initiative. So how could we bridge those common ground together? That is why Thailand work quite we have to be very flexible, not for gaining, but for contributing to the region, and also to the, even we call it the outsider or not, but those must be considered on the, please don't harm any other factors or any other, build any factor that harm the ASEAN centrality. So we will
that's quite a balancing act, I have to say, Mr. Serasi, right? And sometimes people, you know, noticed from time to time that that space of keeping a balance is getting ever smaller from time to time. So it's quite a skill, Mr. Serasi.
Balance doesn't mean each side can be in the same amount of weight, but the same amount of perception, or something that they can get and they can share. I think that is the most important for when we call it balancing. Balancing. It doesn't mean that everything can have in the same amount of each other. No.
Great point. I love that. Now, the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative China brought out over the past few years has won some support in the world, even though there are also question marks from some about the exact content. Do you see, Mr. Song, that this will be the platform in which these initiatives can be put more into real action plans and also real implementations?
I think Latin-Mekong cooperation mechanism, in the past several years, we have a lot of cooperation experiences. We have a lot of rules. And also this will set a very good example for China-ASEAN cooperation, or the ASEAN cooperation, or even Asia-Pacific cooperation, even the global cooperation in other areas. So I'm optimistic we can summarize some experience and to be used maybe in other areas.
How do countries in this cooperation think about the theme with which that would hold everybody together? Is it values, quote unquote, that the West mainly have been talking about, or is it something uniquely of this region, or other common grounds that you are looking for?
If you look at the values of ASEAN identity, it's actually embedded in Article 2 of ASEAN Charter. And ASEAN Charter names some of the following values which are relevant to the sub-regionalism. One would be respect. And certainly countries, whether within ASEAN or external to ASEAN, if they respect each other, the value system will definitely propel cooperation. Another one is prosperity. Prosperity is also within the ASEAN Charter. And if the projects can bring about co-prosperity, then it conforms with the ASEAN values. The third would be a consultation and dialogue. And so certainly in a sub-regionalism, there's a lot of consultation and dialogue, whether at the track 1 level or the track 2 level. So in this sense, it can help cooperation as well. And finally, perhaps the one that's also relevant to our discussion is unity. And because ASEAN is made up of 10 countries, and each country has so much diversity within their local communities, unity in diversity would be another value system which ASEAN can reach out to its external partners, and certainly its external partners themselves also have a lot of diversity. So this exchange of diverse viewpoints and perspective can only enrich the cooperation further. So value system in the ASEAN Charter is perhaps the way to go.
This value that we are talking about might be very different from the, kinds of specific values that some of the others have been talking about when it comes to political system. So it's a very unique way of thinking. I mean, both two options. We'll see how it works. Mr. Song, your thoughts on this same question? I think this is very interesting.
The most important thing is that we should to promote our cooperation to benefit different countries or different regions' development to improve the people's life. I think, especially in this time, because the pandemic is very serious, with its possible economic recession and other challenges. So development for the mankind or for the global world is very important. And to improve the people's life is very important for us.
So how do you see these uncertainties for regional cooperation? When it comes to regional cooperation, you have to work with one another, see each other, open up, let trade go, let people-to-people flow. So a lot of things that we talk about today that are in the blueprint, in the action plan, how do you see it's going to endure the uncertainty of pandemics and policies different countries adopt to deal with the pandemics? Mr. Surashi.
Yes, this is one of a very challenging time from now on, because when we talk about the uncertainty on the disaster, when we talk about the pandemic, that will be truly is the one of natural. The leadership for many things. Firstly, when we talk about the vaccine injection for the COVID, we need a leadership both on management and also on the administration from each country. Every country should focus on that. When I talk about the leadership on management, what is that? The operating level have to be much focused on the internal factor, while the administration leadership in this regard needs on the high level for the external factor to work with the region or not only in the country, but that is one very important. The another is that when we talk about the pandemic, we talk about the virus study. Virus study need to be open, need to be leading with many field of virus study, because it will be living with us. How could we live with the virus? Last but not least, I think the public health. When we talk about public health, we have to allocate knowledge, allocate resources that we have. I think different countries have the certain amount for sure, but we can share, because first, there is local wisdom in public health for prevention also. So how could we share this kind of thing? I think this is the most important for the Lancang Mekong, because we have been living here together for thousand years.
Yeah, I agree with Director Surashi's some points. First, I think on the one hand, we should protect the people's health and life. This is very important. If we lose life, nothing we can gain. Second, maybe we are not certain that how many years we will still face the pandemic. So we should strengthen our cooperation, both regional and also global, to deal with this pandemic better, to step by step to maintain our transnational exchange and cooperation in the future.
Yes, in terms of opening up, this is one area in which Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries, is actually faster than Northeast Asia. So Southeast Asia can be a living laboratory for Northeast Asia to observe what are the best practices in opening up. So that's one possible way of cooperation. Secondly, the future of pandemic management is technology, technology, technology. And in this area, the big powers and the regional powers actually have the technologies that Southeast Asia, ASEAN needs. And so this is another area in which there is great potential for cooperation, particularly from the ASEAN perspective. And finally, in terms of pandemic management, the last 2 years have shown that all the countries in the region did not adopt beggar thy neighbor policy. So keep this up and also prepare for the next coming pandemic, which is a pandemic or epidemic or endemic, which is inevitable. And so preparedness as a form of non-traditional security is going to be very important henceforth, and also another way to cooperate. Thank you.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of my team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.